This video goes out to all of the liberals and conservatives who constantly misconstrue the definition of political ideologies that they know nothing about. So I'm going to correct this error for you. Don't worry guys, I'm here to help. But first, let me tell you what socialism is not. It is not when the government controls things. It is not a nationalized healthcare plan, or tuition-free college, or infrastructure spending, or when you have a welfare system. Sure, nationalized healthcare, tuition-free college, infrastructure spending, full employment, and welfare tends to be some of the perks of living in a socialist country. But these things by themselves a socialist country does not make. It's entirely possible for a capitalist country to have these things. It's called Keynesian economics. So what is socialism? Socialism is most simply defined by workers' ownership and control over the means of production. It means instead of having an economy that is autocratically ran and dictated by a small minority of capitalist investors operating on a basis for profit, it is instead democratically ran and dictated by workers' councils, trade unions, and state administrations operating on a basis typically of human need, preferably on a basis of environmental sustainability as well. Its tenets include the abolition of private property, an economy operating on a basis that isn't strictly for profit, with goods primarily being produced as use values first and commodities second, the abolition of wage labor, the abolition of markets, socialist cooperation over free market competition, and the economy organized according to a plan. Ideally, the planning process should be as democratic as possible, so that everybody has a say from the bottom up, and our leaders are held accountable from the top down. Let's contrast this with capitalism, where the economy is privately owned and primarily operates on a for-profit basis, with goods primarily being produced as commodities first and use values second, wage labor, free market competition, with little to no economic planning outside of the planning needed to generate more profits and keep the whole system going during economic crashes. In practice, capitalism operates on a highly autocratic basis, where the CEOs and shareholders make all of the important decisions and rules while the workers and low-level managers have to abide. In other words, dictation from the top down and accountability from the bottom up. So, if you are a social democrat and just want capitalism with more distributive wealth policies, let me tell you why socialism is still preferable to capitalism. But first, let's ignore the fact that it's only a matter of time before reactionaries take power and impose austerity measures to weaken the social democratic reforms, and instead focus on the hard benefits of socialism. I shall name 10 for you. Number 1. Since a socialist planned economy is devoid of a capitalist class as well as the anarchy of the market, there is by extension no booms or busts, which means hypothetically an economy can grow linearly without the waste, inhumanity, and setbacks caused by recessions and depressions. Number 2. Since there is no more private property, this means no more rents, dividends, royalties, or intellectual property. Not only does this save massive wealth and resources that would otherwise go to the owners of said financial instruments, it would substantially increase the amount of access and participation that can be done by workers. Just imagine a world where you didn't have to pay a third of your income to your landlord, or worrying about being sued by a company because you're 3D printing gas masks during a pandemic. Number 3, no more exploitation, which means substantially higher wages for the average person, providing huge alleviation for bills and more money to spend on things people actually want to buy. If we went socialist tomorrow, everybody would see an immediate increase in pay. Number 4, a drastic reduction in the work week. At this point, we are so productive as a society. Only a minority of the population has to work to keep the wheels of civilization turning. We as a civilization are productive enough to where we could break up the necessary work to keep civilization running among the whole population, drastically reducing work hours and freeing up huge sums of labor, not only to do the work needed to overhaul our energy grid to carbon-neutral renewables, but to free up leisure time for the average person as well. Number 5. More leisure time means less alienation, and less alienation means better mental health for the average person. Think of all of the countless hours we spend doing what is essentially busy work for the capitalist class for the sake of making them more money. This is labor that pertains nothing to our individual interests or talents. We are simply doing this work for the sake of paying bills. Under socialism, substantial amounts of time could be freed up for the average person to do the kind of work that they actually want to do, the kind of labor that is unalienating, the kind of labor that makes people feel like they're actually living fulfilling lives. This substantial increase in leisure time following the establishment of socialism could very well be the catalyst for a second renaissance, as people would be free to read, write, draw, do science, discover new branches of mathematics, learn to play instruments, build exotic houses, and otherwise do the things that we normally couldn't put time away to do because we're too busy trying to put food on the table. Number 6, we no longer have to blow endless billions on advertising. Gone will be the days of people being inundated with commercials that act as a kind of brainwashing, inventing problems that people don't have so that firms can try to sell people on solutions that they don't need. Number 7, there's full employment under socialism, which means no more leaving substantial chunks of the population out of work, which leads to more productivity as a society. Number 8, by design, socialism is environmentally sustainable and friendly. Capitalism, on the other hand, demands infinite growth and exploitation on a finite planet with finite resources. Due to the fact that most pollution is done by large corporations, as well as the fact that rich people use up astronomically more resources than your average consumer, doing away with the capitalist system would allow us to harvest, utilize, and conserve resources more efficiently, achieving a balanced load with our habitat. Number 9, a massive increase in the amount of democracy and participation. A socialist economy would take the power from the few and give it to the many. Radical democracy and direct voting initiatives could be implemented into the planning process so that the public can vote directly on issues and referendums as they see fit. And unlike under bourgeois democracy, socialist democracy would actually be able to respond and address the needs of the people. In addition, open source programs could be used to get people involved in and working on different projects, which would substantially increase innovation. As opposed to having a dozen companies competing to create X product, in socialism, those same dozen companies would be working together, sharing their information, rather than trying to hoard proprietary knowledge for competitive edge to make the ultimate product. It is in this way the competitive mechanism stifles innovation, as IPs for competitive edge hinder access to information and by extension participation. Number 10, massive alleviation of structural violence and poverty. Under socialism, there would be no poverty. Everybody would have a home, a job, healthcare, and education. There would be no more starvation, no more dying of preventable illnesses, no more people begging for money on street corners. The reason why poverty exists today isn't because we don't have the resources or the manpower to bring it to an end, but because we lack the political will to do so. There is no profit in ending poverty, and as a result, capitalism is fundamentally incapable of solving the problem. Anyways, that's all I have to say about that today. I hope I've cleared up some confusion and made a fairly compelling case for my cause. If you enjoyed this content, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video with like-minded people. I've got more informative content to come. I will see you guys then.